is not coming through very well. I think we might need to close those blinds today, and let's turn the lights off so we can see a little better. Let's go back here just a little bit. I did not get to this the last time, so I want to talk about some of the qualifications for the House of Representatives. So if you're going to serve in the House of Representatives, you must be a minimum of 25 years old. You also have to be a citizen for at least 7 years. Wait, so you're telling me that a member of the House of Representatives does not have to be a natural American? That is correct. So that means that any of you could be a member of the House of Representatives. Even if you are not currently a citizen, you could go through that process. You could still have time to do that before you turn 25. But you have to be 25 at the minimum. You also need to be a citizen for at least 7 years, and you need to have certain residency requirements met. So we have to be a resident of the state from which you are wanting to represent. And it's generally recommended, and some states I believe do require, that you are a resident in a district, although the Constitution does not specifically outline that. Now, once you meet those certain requirements there, you do have to be approved by Congress. Generally, they are not going to reject somebody that's elected by the people, but they do have the power to refuse to admit a member if they have a majority vote. They also do have the power to expel somebody. They have the ability to, for disciplinary reasons, to make them leave and to force them out. This requires a 2/3 vote to expel somebody. But most members are going to resign. Most of them don't want to go through that humiliation. They don't want to have that on their record. And so if they know they're even being brought up for a vote, they're simply just going to step aside. There's a few informal qualifications that are often used to determine who our congressmen are going to be. This can often be the party that they identify with. That could be one of those. Their popularity. As much as we don't want to admit that congressional races are based off of popularity, a lot of times they are. Why do you think the president goes around and campaigns for certain people, trying to make them more popular? Hey, I know the president. He showed up to my benefit. He showed up to fundraise for me. Unfortunately, gender and ethnicity have been in the past. Still can be today. In some districts, there are certain ethnicities that are just not going to be represented. And then political experience is another one. These are not mentioned in the Constitution, but when it comes to the voters, they often are going to look at these type of areas to determine whether they want to vote for that person or not. Now let's move on to the Senate. Pictured here is the current president pro temp of the Senate. His name is Orrin Hatch. Just for review, what is the Speaker of the House? Or who is the Speaker of the House? Paul Ryan. Yeah, you need to know him. Just like you know Paul Ryan is Speaker of the House, you need to know that Orrin Hatch is the current president pro temp. We'll talk a little bit about his position later on, but he is the one in charge of the Senate when the vice president is absent. So when we get to talking about the qualifications and the requirements for vice president, he actually presides as the president of the Senate. But the vice president's duties often require him to be absent, and so we need somebody to step in to maintain order. That's this guy right here. Orrin Hatch, O-R-R-I-N, Hatch, like the egg. So we call the Senate the upper house. That's more of an informal tag that we put onto it. But there are a couple reasons why we call it the upper house. Part of it is that about 30% of the senators have at one time been representatives, but people don't go from the Senate to then go serve in the House. Okay, so there's also a fewer number of senators, so it's a little bit more exclusive group. There are certain privileges that senators have or certain voting rights that they have, issues that they deal with that are exclusive to the Senate that the House does not get to be a part of. And so many times senators have larger groups of people they represent. They often can serve longer just because of their popularity, and so that's why it's considered the upper house. Now, every state gets 2 senators, no exceptions. Doesn't matter whether you're California or Rhode Island, whether you're Montana or you are Pennsylvania, everybody gets 2. That was part of the Connecticut Compromise once again. And they are elected, according to the Constitution, by their state legislator. Well, the original idea was that the Senate was going to be the upper house, the more experienced politicians, and so the state legislatures would know who the best candidates were and would be able to appoint 2 very high-level politicians to represent the Senate. Sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? Why would that be a negative? Why did that become such a problem, do you think? Okay, there's bias involved, sure. How do we get bias toward these people? Or what are some things that could have happened to influence the state legislators to vote for them individually? Wait, Charlie, did you say something? Money, very good. Bribery became a huge part of this. So if you are a member in the House of Representatives, if you want to be a senator, you might try throwing some money the way of the state legislators saying, I deserve to be senator, and that's exactly what happened. So to clean up government and to allow the people to have a say, we passed the 17th Amendment, so now the individual voters from every state get to pick their senators. What is the downside to this? What?
Mob rule.
Say mob rule? Maybe not. What else? What would be a downside? Why is it maybe a negative to having the entire population vote for a senator?
You may not get the best senator.
Okay. It again could turn into a popularity contest. And instead of getting a really quality politician, you're going to get somebody that looks like a senator, somebody that has personality, somebody that relates to the people, which can be a good thing, but may not translate into a good senator. Now, the 17th Amendment also dealt with vacancies. So if a senator dies in office or if he gets removed from office, then it now becomes the governor's responsibility to appoint or determine that they're going to have a special election for a senator to replace him. And I've seen it done both ways. Both ways have their positives, both ways have their negatives in all of that. But the governor has the power to do that. Now, when it comes to terms for a senator, a little bit different than the House. So, a senator serves for 6 years in an individual term. And there are only 1/3 of all the senators who are up for election at a time. This is what is known as having a continuous body. So you never have more than 34 senators who are out campaigning, actively trying to get reelected. So you can still have a majority of the Senate who are focused on bills, focused on laws, focused on government activity. And so it continuously operates. We contrast that with the House of Representatives, and they're working for about a year and a half, and then the last 6 months of their term, they are re-campaigning, trying to win election again. And it is everybody. All 435 members of the House are campaigning, trying to win that election every 2 years. So the Senate operates a little bit more, with a little bit more continuity because of this 1/3 election rotation. So you're going to have this third over here are going to be up for election here in 2018. This third here on the aisles, you guys are going to be up for election in 2020. And this third over here, you're going to be up for election in 2022. Which means that when these guys win their election seat in 2018, they have 6 years before they got to start thinking about campaigns because we got to cycle through the entire body. Okay, make sense? Good. Now, qualifications for the Senate. You'll notice that these are a little bit elevated from the House of Representatives, which also goes along with the upper house mentality. So you have to be 30 years old as opposed to 25 in the House. This is a stair step for each of the positions we have in our government. House is the lowest, then the Senate, and the presidency is going to be up with even higher qualifications, which we'll get to later. You have to be a citizen for 9 years instead of a measly 7 years for the House of Representatives. And once again, you do have to be a resident of the state. I can't go win an election for the state of Alaska, having never set foot in that state, and not having plans to live in that state. Now, once again, you have to have approval of the Senate. And once again, the Senate can refuse to admit any member based on a majority vote. They get to decide what qualifies them to expel or what qualifies them to deny somebody the privilege of serving in the Senate, but they can't expel their members by a 2/3 vote. We've had 15 of those happen in our nation's history where they've been expelled. So we've talked about both the House, we've talked about the Senate, we've talked about the qualifications for each. It is really important that you know what it takes to be a member in the House compared to a member in the Senate. And you know those qualifications and how they're different. This section we're going to talk in general about congressional members and some of the things that they do and some of the things that they have the privilege of being a part of. When we look at their roles, first and foremost, they are legislators. They are elected to make laws. They also serve as representatives. And there are 4 ways that we categorize representatives to act on our behalf. And so I put a brief statement up here with each one of these roles to help us to understand how they're different. So in my mind, they also work as let me just walk through them first. So the trustees, these are the congressmen and women who are going to vote with their conscience and their own personal belief system and their judgment. So they're going to vote based on what they think is right as a person, as an individual. Is that a good thing? Can be. I hear a yes, I hear a can be. What could be a drawback to that? Okay, a flawed conscience. Okay. A what? Say political stance. Okay, so yeah, they could be. Their conscience could be different from what their normal political viewpoint may be, or what their people elected them to do. Yeah. Those that are serving as a delegate, or those that are acting as a delegate, they vote based on the majority opinion of their constituents. You all know what that term constituent means? It's the people they represent. Okay, so the people that elect them are the constituent. I don't want to glaze over that without making sure we all know what that means. So the constituents are the people that elect them. So if you are working as a delegate, if you are serving as a delegate here, and that's your mindset, you're always going to vote with the people that elected you. It may not be with your conscience. So You may be fundamentally opposed to repealing Obamacare. But because the people who elected you want you to vote to repeal Obamacare, you're going to vote with them. Even though it goes against everything that you personally believe, because you believe I'm elected by the people, I'm going to represent them well, and so I am their delegate. People who are partisans, they're going to vote exclusively with their political party, regardless of conscience and regardless of the opinion of their constituents. So you are elected from a group of people who would, let's say that you're a Democrat, but you got elected from a very conservative group of Democrats. A lot of them leaning more toward independent. They are wanting to repeal and replace Obamacare. They've elected you. You tend to be a little bit more conservative than most Democrats, and you probably would personally choose from your conscience to repeal Obamacare. But because your political party is opposed to that idea and they want to keep Obamacare, you are going to vote partisan with your political party and vote to keep Obamacare, even though that's not what your constituents want and that's not what your personal conscience wants. But that's how you're going to vote, because you are voting partisan. Now, those who are grouped into the politicos, they're going to try to balance all three. They're trying to make everybody happy. Personally, they're going to make themselves happy, they're going to try to make their delegates happy, and they're also going to try to make their political party happy. This is why we see a lot of flip-flopping, a lot of inconsistencies, is because they're trying to make every group happy, and it's really, really difficult. Some can do it well, but not everybody can. Okay, so this is just a way that we can kind of identify the direction that some of these guys are going to lead. So in Washington, they typically look at some of the congressmen as, well, they're a delegate, so they're going to vote with their constituents every time. Or they're a trustee, we don't know where they're going to go. It depends on their personal values. Now, they can also serve as committee members. This is the third role of our congressmen and women. So there are tons of committees in Washington to be a part of. And there's usually a competition to see who can be a part of the most prominent committees to get your name recognized. There are committees that talk about bills that are being presented. There are committees on finance. There are committees on education. There are committees that oversee the president and monitor what he's doing and find out whether he's doing things correctly or incorrectly. So all kinds of committee members or committees that they can be a part of, and many of them get assigned and put on those committees. They also serve as servants of their constituents. So as we saw in one of those short clips, one of the new congressmen was inviting people from the state to come visit him. So they generally try to meet with anybody from their state. They want to hear your opinions. If there's a political issue that you are wrestling with or that you really want to see happen, the best thing to do is to contact your representative. And you may say, well, they don't really care about me. If you are from their state, from their district, you are one of the voters, they care. So I've talked with two guys who are actively in politics, and they said that they will do everything they possibly can to personally reach out to anybody that writes them a letter or gives them a phone call. Depending on the issue and depending on the volume of requests, they may not always be able to do it personally. Sometimes they have to have a staffer do that, but they will make sure that every letter is replied to from their office because they feel that's very important. They don't want anybody to feel like they are being neglected. And then lastly, they are also politicians. They are going to be running for government office. They are going to be focusing on winning elections as well. So these are the 5 roles of our congressmen and women. And for doing all those things, we do pay them. Some would argue we pay them too much. Some would say we don't pay them enough for what they deal with. That's neither here nor there for our purpose in our class. Under the 27th Amendment, what are they not allowed to do regarding their compensation. They cannot give themselves a pay raise in the midterm. So they can give themselves a pay raise to take effect after they get elected the next term. But you cannot give yourself a midterm pay raise. So not only is it against the Constitution, but it's also not going to look good on your political record, especially if you go in asking for a pay raise when you're making a whole lot more money than the average American, and you say, you know what, we're going to put a bill out there that's going to raise our salary. Most of the middle and lower class is going to say, I'm done voting for you, I'm finding somebody else. And you're not going to be able to enjoy that salary even if it were to pass. So they have found other ways to adjust their compensation besides adding to their salary. So I don't remember the last time that they had an actual pay raise. I think it's been a while. But they will do other things. And so there are a number of other privileges that they get that are not considered salary. Now, I'm not going to ask you to list these, but it would be good for you to be familiar with them. So I'm just going to walk through each one of them here and give you a little bit of a understanding of what they are. So they get specific cost of living increases every year, and some of those are wrapped into this, so it adjusts for inflation. So each of these privileges go up, even though their baseline salary does not. They get special tax deductions that the average American does not get, and this is generally because they have to maintain two homes. They have to have a house in Washington, which is crazy expensive, and they also have to have a home that is back in their home state where they are representing people. And so they get a special tax deduction there, which can result in thousands of dollars in less tax money they've got to pay. They also get certain travel stipends, depending upon which state they represent, how far away they are. The government pays for a lot of that travel, back and forth, even meals and hotel stays if necessary. They pay very small premiums for insurance and medical care, and this has been one of the big reasons why people are so upset about Obamacare and even the Republicans' attempt to repeal and replace. Because the guys that are making these laws pay very little to nothing for their medical bills, for their medical insurance. They get like cream of the crop, best of the best in the country. And yet they're trying to write laws that will determine how we pay for our medical expenses. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And it's part of the reason why most people believe that those that are writing it really have no idea of what Obamacare has done to the average person. They have no idea what the medical care system is really like. So there was a gentleman, I think he was a senator, maybe he was a member of the House, who went through cancer treatments, I want to say 6 months or a year ago, and it was pretty rough cancer, and he was just talking about the blessing it was to have such great medical care, and that he didn't have to worry about any of those medical bills that were accumulating. He flipped it and tried to make it a positive reach out to the American people by saying, I now understand more fully, seeing those bills, what the average American is going through, and it'll help me in my attempts to make the healthcare system better. Now, I don't know whether that was really helpful or not. They also get pretty nice pension packages for retirement, and those continue on beyond Social Security, and they get those extra benefits for that. They also get compensation here for their office space, both in Washington and also back home in their home state. They get allotments for not only the office supplies, but use of cell phones, Wi-Fi, anything that they need to run their offices. They also get the franking privilege. Franking privilege is the ability to send mail without postage or without paying for that postage. All we have to do is sign their office name to it, and the post office will send it for free. It gives them a benefit to be able to campaign freely or to be able to reach out to their constituents without having the expense of paying for postage. Post office is a government-controlled agency, so that's an easy one for them to be able to get free opportunities there. They also get discounts on radio and TV production. And so when they are putting together commercials and they are trying to campaign, this is a huge benefit as well. So, knowing all of these privileges that they get, how difficult do you think it would be to try to campaign against somebody with all these advantages? How do you do it? You lose. How in the world, let's see, I'm over the age of 30, so I could run for Senate. How in the world would I displace the current senator knowing he's got all these resources? How, what? Loads of support money. Where's that going to come from? Just going to go take loans out and hope that I can pay it off later. Not a great idea, especially we're talking millions of dollars here. And what'd you say? Donations and fundraisers. Yeah, so I'm going to start going door to door. I'm going to start hosting banquets and fundraisers, and I'm going to try to raise as much money as I can. Get people to believe in me so much so that you want to open up your wallet and you want to throw money at my feet. Want to try it? No, okay, I don't do that today. But it's a really difficult job. Now, the person who is in the office, they're called the incumbent, and that incumbent generally has a huge advantage unless he has done something to really hurt his reputation or hurt his communication with the voters. The incumbent always has a huge advantage going into a new election. So it becomes very difficult for somebody else to jump into that without having a lot of money saved up. Should there be limitations on this? Or should they just continue to be able to add more benefits to this package, add more tax breaks, add more money for travel? Or do you think this is a fair deal? Fair deal or not? Where does this money come from to pay for all this stuff? Our taxes, right? So they are spending tax money to be able to make all this stuff happen. Okay. I'll let you mull that over a little bit. Think through how much money times 535 members in Congress that get all these benefits. How much money that has to be? It has to be a lot. Now, they get a few other privileges that are non-compensation privileges. There is a no arrest privilege. Now, there is exceptions to this. If it's a criminal case, then yes, they still get arrested. But if it's something pretty minor, they cannot be arrested. This is supposed to try to help them be able to get to their sessions in Congress without any kind of hindrance. They can actually fly down the roads and break the speed limit laws without any kind of penalty in order to get to Congress. They also have the freedom and ability to say anything they want while it's in debate in the House. So they get a little bit of extended freedom of speech there. So the purpose in putting this in the Constitution was to make sure that each topic had the ability to be debated freely and openly without fear of somebody being prosecuted for the things that they are debating and talking about on the House floor. Certainly that can go too far. Just look up Brooke Sumner. Some of you know what I'm talking about there. So the main purpose of that is to have maximum freedom of debate on the floor. Any questions, comments?